Schoen's model of reflective practice is based on reflecting in practice and reflecting on practice. And these are terms we've come across before. They're very popular terms, and it's a very popular approach. And we can represent these ideas of reflecting in practice and reflecting on practice in a very simple diagram. We can see here the starting point is the actual teaching and the learning that's going on in the classroom. And it's the thinking in the moment, the reflection in practice that occurs at this point. After the session is when the teacher reflects on practice. This is when the teacher has more time to think about what happened, to think back on what happened. And this whole process of reflecting in practice and reflecting on practice then leads into preparing for the next teaching session with the students, planning, getting the resources ready. And then this leads into the next teaching, which again will have reflection in practice. So again, you can see this repeated cycle being engaged with by the reflective practitioner. Schoen made the distinction in this model between technical rationality, or in other words, the application of learned theory, with what he called tacit knowledge, or in other words, experiential learning gathered from the classroom. He believed that this was, in a sense, a theory-experience gap, because the theories that the teacher is trying to apply in the classroom may not generate the sort of outcomes that the teacher is expecting. In other words, a different experience. And what this can actually mean is that it changes the way they're thinking about teaching, and actually may not even define the way they actually think about their own practice in the classroom. So in terms of Schoen's model, what we're actually thinking about is the experiences in the classroom and how these combine, how these add together to generate a learned and acquired theory for the teacher. Schoen saw that the real teaching environment, therefore, was the place where the teacher is tested and evaluated for themselves in terms of what they're actually doing. Theory is, therefore, not a rigid thing here. It is something which can change, can grow with the teacher's experience. Although for a new teacher, they would be applying theory quite rigidly, as their experience develops and as they learn more about their own approach to teaching and their own beliefs and values about learning, then theory starts to become a little bit less rigid and they start to apply things differently. So reflection in action and reflection on action allows teachers to begin to continually improve their own practice, to change their teaching, adapt, learn and evolve. And what we have to remember is that this doesn't make theory invalid at all. It simply begins to change the theory that the teacher is enacting. And theory is therefore a valuable starting point for the teacher. And this is what Schoen calls theory in use rather than just theory. So in this model, we can see what Schoen is talking about. The teacher is attempting to make sense of and to use theories in their teaching, putting into action what the books are saying, what the literature is talking about. And this, therefore, leads to some sort of real-world experience, or in other words, what they're learning from what happens in the classroom. And so the teacher moves from knowing that, or in other words, knowing about the theory, to knowing how, or in other words, knowing how to put the theory into use.